Well, welcome everybody. My name is Tom McMeekin. I'm a solutions architect at Databricks from Australia. And joining me on the stage today, I have Daniel Antoinette. Dan, did you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Hey guys, my name is Daniel Antoinette. I'm a distinguished engineer for data platforms for National Australia Bank.
Thanks, Dan. So folks, over the next 40 minutes, Dan and I are going to be sharing some insights into how Databricks is helping organisations like National Australia Bank in unlocking the value of data and AI, but also getting that right balance between innovation and security and governance. You know, we're going to be applying a number of different lenses across the conversation today. I'm going to be just taking a view around how data and AI is reshaping this constant tension between innovation and governance and security, particularly in the world of data and AI. And then we're going to be throwing over to Dan, who's going to be unpacking how the team at National Australia Bank have been on this journey in starting out building their foundations around data and AI, and particularly in the world of security and governance and compliance. And then finally, Dan and I are going to come back and share some key takeaways, some patterns and some best practices with you. So hopefully you can pick up a few action items that you can take away and apply to your organisation tomorrow. But first, I wanted to anchor the conversation today on this quote from Ali Ghodsi, the CEO at Databricks. And Ali makes a really profound point here around the differentiating capabilities that data and AI will bring to organisations, in particular to those organisations who can harness the power of data and AI and the real value from it. You know, when I look at this quote, immediately what I start to think about is the exceptional business outcomes that data and AI can drive for organisations. You know, these could be improving the operational efficiencies, enhancing your customer experience, but also in risk mitigation as well. Now, what's not really apparent when you look at this quote immediately is another undifferentiated heavy lifting component that some organisations overlook immediately. And this is in particular around enabling organisations to scale data and AI with trust. And that's exactly where Databricks is really positioned here to help organisations. So if you're on this early journey with Databricks and looking to establish some key capabilities around being able to scale data and AI with trust, you know, there's some key pillars to think about and get right early on. The first is embedding transparent data quality and lineage, ensuring that you have strong access controls and privacy controls, making sure that you can automate your compliance and regulatory controls alongside this as well, ensuring that you have trust in the platform that you're establishing. Secondly, or lastly, it's ensuring to be able to have that full visibility and discoverability and life cycling of your data and AI assets across your estate. Now, when we talk about security and compliance and governance, you know, the key thing to think about is embedding these controls and establishing these mechanisms early on in your journey. You know, it's about enabling the business to scale. It's not about getting in the way of innovation from an organisation perspective. And this is exactly where Databricks is working with customers like National Australia Bank in helping achieve this and operationalise this mission. The data intelligence platform, you know, is designed to help operationalise a lot of these governance principles. Now, typically when we start to think about governance and security compliance at Databricks, we immediately jump to Unity Catalog. Now, Unity Catalog is a key enabler to a lot of these principles. You know, it's amazing in establishing the transparent lineage, ensuring access controls around your data estate. But what's also important to appreciate is it is not the only piece in the puzzle. And what you'll learn from Dan today is, alongside Unity Catalog, key enablers like network controls, security controls, and also AI guardrail elements, you know, are key to being able to unlock and being able to scale data and AI with trust. So now, to bring this to life, I'm going to hand this over to Dan now. And Dan's going to share the journey that National Australia Bank have been on for a couple of years with Databricks. You know, from being able to modernising legacy data platforms to be able to scale AI, governed AI with trust. Dan's going to be sharing some deep dive architectural patterns and best practices into how they have approached this, a lot of these challenges and problems into being able to build a forward-leaning data intelligence platform. Dan, over to you.
Thank you. I was supposed to get off the stage when he started talking, but he started straight away, so it was a bit awkward, so I just stood there. That's fine. But cool, so it's my pleasure, as Tom mentioned, to take you through what we're doing at the National Australia Bank and how we're using Databricks to build our strategic data platform in a heavily regulated organization. So first, a little bit of scene setting. So I'm going to try to take you guys on a journey over the next half an hour or so. Keyword there being try, but let's see how well I do. So the National Australia Bank, from now on I'm going to refer to it as NAB, as we do in Australia, is one of Australia's big four banks, and it's the largest business bank that we have in Australia. And so, as you can see, we have a number of different customers and colleagues, not just in Australia, but around the globe. And with that comes a lot of scrutiny around not just how we store the data, but how we manage data, how that data is being used, both internally within the bank, but also externally as well. And so, we've been on this data journey for a number of years now, and as some of you may be able to relate, we've had a number of iterations of our data platform. And so one of the things that we really tried to do was try to understand, try to learn from the previous iterations of our data platforms and try to figure out what worked, what didn't work, and how can we iterate. And so the technology landscape has been evolving, and it continues to evolve quite rapidly. Cloud providers are coming out with different services, uplifts to the current services that you're using, all in the way to be able to do things better. And so we, as a platform, have been continuing to iterate and evolve as well, so that we can be more efficient and effective in what we do, both internally from a management perspective, but also from an end user perspective in how they can use the platform. And so we've really tried to focus, when we're thinking about what the new platform would look like, on 4 key areas. So simpler technology ecosystem. So this isn't just about the number of different tools and services that are being used, but how we're using the different tools as well. So use them for what they're made for and not try to make them do something that they're not supposed to. Standardized patterns and processes. Now, as much as we tried, as much as we had the best intentions for the previous platforms, unfortunately we still ended up with a lot of different ways to do the same thing. So things like data ingestion, things like serving data, multiple different patterns to do the same thing, and so we really wanted to focus on standardizing patterns and processes. Enhanced stability and reliability, so this goes without saying. Every data platform needs to be stable and reliable, and so especially if you're centralizing your data and serving out that data to different parts of the organization, you need to, especially business critical domains such as financial crime, you need to make sure that that data is reliable and consistently up to date. And then a scalable data platform. So right now we have petabytes of data on the platform already, and we've really only ingested about half of the number of sources that we want to. And so with having that much data, you need to make sure that you optimize how the data is not just stored, but how it's accessed so that you can efficiently and effectively use the data as well. All right, so with our key focuses defined, we set out to start the next chapter, and hopefully final chapter, of our data platform. And so using the key learnings of the previous platforms, the takeaways, as I mentioned, what worked, what didn't work, we came up with 5 principles that our data platform needed to uphold. So number 1 and 2 go hand in hand, end-to-end stream processing architecture and travel towards batchless environment. So our Chief Data Officer, Christian Nielsen, has a saying that we want to provide data like electricity. And so that means that the data needs to be fast, needs to be available, and needs to be reliable, all the way from data ingestion through to transformation, through to consumption. Minimal technology complexity. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, we wanted to reduce the number of tools and services that were being used. And so this is where we really started to think about how the tool, or what tools and services could be used to do what we needed. And we'll cover that in a bit on the next slide. Auto-scalable approach. So this is a standard now. Everything on a platform is supposed to scale, or is a standard to have auto-scaling. And so as a part of this, we really wanted to think about each component of our platform. How can that scale to be able to handle the massive data loads, but also to be able to provide that user seamless experience from a user perspective. And then no data duplication. Again, one of the biggest issues that we had on our previous platforms is that everyone seemed to want to copy the data to their own environment. And it always seemed to be the biggest tables that were copied, which is very frustrating. And so, sorry it took a while to get to Databricks, but as I said, I needed to set the scene. So introducing Ada, our strategic data platform. And so this is named after Ada Lovelace, the first computer programmer. And so it's a very high level, very simplified architecture, but the previous two slides really just equate to this. And so starting from left to right, we have a standardized way to do data ingestion. So using the different services provided by Fivetran, so HVR, hybrid, and SAS, depending on the source, how it's used, where it's come from, where it's stored in the bank. Obviously using Databricks as our centralized data platform, so using it for the wealth of tools that are available in Databricks, so from ETL to analytics to machine learning to GenAI, and then using Power BI as the visualization capability. So visualizations, dashboarding, and reporting, and that is our enterprise reporting capability. And so using this pattern, using this simplified architecture, we've been able to, we already have quite a number of use cases, both running on the data on the platform, but also running on the platform directly itself. All right, so now into the thick of things. So we've got the platform, we've got the data on the platform, we've got ways to consume the data. So the first step is how do you make that data safe to access? And so one of the biggest challenges that we have had on the previous platforms is how to make data access easy, but while also implementing the security and governance controls that we need to meet our regulatory requirements. And so we really wanted to try to meet in the middle. As I mentioned, make data easy, make data access easy, but still implement our controls. Sounds easy, but it quickly starts to unravel when you start doing it. And unfortunately, I can tell you that we didn't do that as a part of our first iteration of our data access. And so at a minimum, we have to control access based on confidentiality. So we have 4 levels of classification: public, private, confidential, and highly confidential. Restriction, so restriction is a way to further segregate our confidentiality. So for instance, some people might have access to some parts of highly confidential data and not access to other parts, and so that's where restricted tags come into play. Sources, as I mentioned, we have a number of different sources coming onto the platform, and so we have quite some sensitive sources as well. So third-party data, HR data, so we need to control access at a source level as well. Jurisdiction, we have data coming in from different countries, and so we need to control it based on jurisdiction, and white label brand data. And so Unity Catalog offers quite a suite of tools on or functionality for how you can implement your data access controls, but how you implement them and what you do really just depends on the requirement that you have as an organization. And so using dynamic views, we're able to implement our column-based masking and row-based filtering controls as a part of the view definition. And so one of the things to remember is that we wanted to minimize the data duplication, and so these views are built directly on top of the tables that store the data, but no one gets access to the underlying tables. Everyone only gets access to the dynamic views. Now, one of the things that obviously complicates things is how do you make sure that you're not, One of the things that complicates things is that, as you can imagine, there is a number of different permutations that happen as a part of this for the data access. So people can have a lot of different combinations of data access entitlements, and you need to have a number of different individual Databricks groups to be able to achieve this fine-grained access control. And so, not ideal. And And so this is where we've sort of come in and developed or used the idea of a persona. And so if I go to the next one. So this one here is our sort of high-level view of how our data access as well as our resource access works. And so the concept of a persona isn't new, and we've implemented these personas really to minimize the massive amount of groups that users would need to get access to. And so we actually started with user-based access, and let me tell you, the management overhead of trying to manage that many different users with that many different combinations of groups is not easy, but also from an end user perspective, it's really, really difficult to get access to the data that you need, having to apply for so many different groups just to be able to do your job. And so we created the concept of a persona. We found that a lot of users actually had the same data entitlements, especially from the same team and from the same domain. And so with the goal of democratizing access to data, we created a set of personas that were able to meet the needs of the different groups around the bank, as well as simplify that access to the data. And so we were able, as you probably are aware, using dynamic views, the access is based on each individual user's access. And so one of the gaps and challenges that we had is not just resource-based access as well, but where can users safely store that data? Because when they store it, it's based on their access, meaning that people could get access to confidential data that they're not supposed to. And so using the concept of, what we did is we created these segregated environments, called workspaces as well, just to confuse people, because they're not data-rich workspaces, but a workspace that a persona ties to. And so that persona is what controls the data access, and now they have an environment where everyone who is a part of that workspace has the same data entitlements, and so they can safely store the data within that workspace as well. And so we took it one step further, as you can see in the diagram, and made it a one-to-many relationship. And so what that means is that one persona can be tied to any number of different workspaces. So now, again, to minimize duplication, data duplication, what that means is that people can actually share data across the different workspaces. And so that has helped the business tremendously in terms of being able to share stuff like features and data that's being generated for other use cases. All right. So one of the things that we really tried to do was make it simple for the end user. We want to make it sure that the end user experience is, and all the resources and stuff that they use is fast, safe, reliable, scalable. This is where serverless comes into the picture. And you might be thinking, surely we can't use serverless in a highly regulated company where the data leaves our control. But we actually can. And so while we've been able to get approval to be able to use serverless, there is a but, or there's a but, and there always is a but. It was a very time-consuming process. And so there was a number of different risk assessments that we needed to do, a number of hoops that we needed to jump through, but a number of different risk assessments that we needed to do. So third-party risk assessment, customer risk assessments, the list goes on. And we also had to consult with our regulator just to be able to get the approval to use serverless. And that took about 6 months to do, which is quite an amount of time, so it's not ideal. But there is an upside. So the benefits for it taking that amount of time was that some of the functionality from Databricks came out that we needed to be able to properly implement serverless and adopt it. So stuff like internet on-off, stuff like the secure egress policies or seg policies, stuff like the budget policies so that we can monitor costs and make sure that we can control those costs. All of those things were required for us to be able to properly adopt serverless, but also be able to provide the service to our end users as well. Now, serverless is only the first step. So we got the approval to use serverless, that's all well and good, but then how do we connect back into our other NAB managed systems? So we have a lot of different patterns or I shouldn't say a lot, but we have different patterns to be able to connect and provide data externally or outbound to our third-party vendors, but we have no pattern to enable direct connectivity to our other NAB managed services within the bank. And so this is where the problem lies. And so this is where Private Link comes into the picture. And so, sorry, I've just realized that the timer hasn't been counting, so I'm not sure how long I've got left, but we still got time, a bit of time. Cool, so this is where serverless comes into the picture. So this is what allowed us to realize the full value of serverless. And so to be able to use serverless, we needed to be able to, as I mentioned, connect to the other services that we use on the platform. Services like GitHub, Artifactory, HashiCorp Vault, other cloud services that we're utilizing. We needed to be able to have a way to securely provide that connectivity from the serverless instances. And this is where the Private Link came into the picture. As you can imagine, there is a lot of concerns with enabling this sort of connectivity within a bank. And so let me tell you, if you thought that it took a long time to get approval to use serverless, we actually experienced the first birthday with the back and forth conversations to be able to get this enabled within the bank. And that was just the conversations, not even the controls or anything like that, as well the implementation side of things. And so, with a lot of collaboration with Databricks, with our security, network, and cloud architects, we were able to come up with a minimum set of controls that needed to be enforced to be able to minimize the risk to enable this connectivity. We were also able to come up with an architecture that allowed us to meet those controls so that we could implement something like this within the organization. And so, as you can see, there is a number of different hops. There's a number of different gateways, firewalls, balances that we need to go through just to be able to implement those controls to establish that connectivity. And so while the pattern isn't great in terms of latency and cost, it still allows us to tap into the full potential of using serverless, while in parallel we iterate and can evolve and understand how we can do the pattern better, how we can implement it better to minimize the amount of hops and minimize the costs associated with it. And so, now we've covered serverless, now we've covered the Private Link, obviously the buzz, GenAI, how it ties into it. So, just a bit of background about GenAI at NAB. And so right now, we do have a lot of different manual tasks that happen around the bank. So stuff like answering customer queries, summarizing transaction, classifying loan documents, all of it takes time and effort from our colleagues that could be better served. And so the amount of time that it generally takes depends on the banker or the colleague or the broker or the colleague. And so using the power of GenAI and what it's actually able to do now, we're able to think about how can we automate some of these tasks? How can we do it better? How can we give some time back to our bankers, back to our brokers, back to our customers so that they can be more efficient at what they do? And so using GenAI, we are not only able to give our bankers time to answer more customer queries or our brokers time to answer more or review more loan documents, we're also able to increase our security posture as well. And so we remove the manual handling out of the loop and we're able to provide a full audit trail of what was done when and by whom using the capability that we've built. And so for some of our classification use cases, we've actually seen some better accuracy results as well. And so using GenAI, we're able to be faster and better at servicing our customers, both internally and externally, which leads to better outcomes as well for the bank. And so, brings us to AI Gateway. As you're probably aware, we have sort of a theme going. We very much want to centralize our governance, very much want to do one way, same way, follow the one-way, same-way approach. And so using the AI gateway, we're able to do just that. So users, it shouldn't matter where the LLMs are hosted, it shouldn't matter what guardrails need to be used or security controls, that should all be taken care of. And so users shouldn't have to worry about that. They shouldn't have to worry about how to interact with an LLM that's hosted on Bedrock, or how to interact with an LLM that's hosted on OpenAI, or what guardrails they need to use. It should just be out of the box. They should just be able to jump on and focus on developing their use case and doing what's required to do just that. And so using the AI gateway, we're able to centralize the way we interact with LLMs. We're able to centralize the guardrails that are being used so that it's one way, same way. And we're also able to get some more benefits from the out-of-the-box capabilities, both to meet our security controls and just for user experience. So payload logging, for instance, mandatory security control. We need to know what's happening when. Fallbacks and rate limiting, also very important for us to be able to protect our production environment and make sure that it's always running and protected from the different workloads that are happening on the platform. All right, so this leads to our high-level architecture. Now that I've covered the gateway, this is a very simplified view of our components and how we're sort of utilizing them, how they interact. And so with this, we sort of have two major goals that we're trying to achieve. So one is build, test, and deploy all in the same place. And two is to provide a self-service capability that has all of the functionality that's required to build out a GenAI use case in a secure and safe manner. And so, as you can see, we're using quite a few of the different Databricks components. And so doing that, we're able to provide that seamless connectivity between the components, but we'll also be able to do things like to enhance the developer experience. So things like quickly being able to test out different LLMs, being able to test and compare different LLMs, help with the prompt engineering, and also utilizing things like Databricks apps to bring the applications to the data. And so we've also had to make sure that we can support all the different file types that are available, and so especially unstructured data, so we can use that as it lands, or as it comes through the various APIs that we have. And then we've also been able to connect, as you can see, to the various different providers that we have, and we're continuing to expand. And so I guess one thing to probably take away from this slide is that even though it took a while to set this up, obviously with all of the governance and security controls around it, we still really have only scratched the surface with what we can do or what we were able to do. As you probably are aware, GenAI or AI in general is continuing to evolve in a tremendous rate. And so as such, we'll continue to evolve, we'll continue to expand our offering so that we can continue to uplift, but also continue to meet those goals that I mentioned. So one is to, I lost it. One is to do everything all in one place, sorry. And two, and that is important, especially with the big push for agentic AI now. And two is to provide a safe and secure self-service capability where everyone can just jump on and utilize the service as opposed to having to worry about that governance or that security and stuff like that. All right, so on to the final section, patterns, playbooks, and takeaways. So I threw a lot of information at you at a short amount of time, and so I guess a lot of it was high level as well. And so from this slide, I really wanted to sort of have you guys focus on three key areas that you should take away with you. The first one, serverless first. As I sort of touched on, it took a long time to get approval to use serverless. It was a time-consuming process, but it was well worth the time to be able to get that over the line. So one, it takes away the management overhead and also the customer or user complaints and questions about wanting a bigger cluster or a bigger warehouse, because that always happens. But two, it also helps with the cost side of things, so the cost monitoring and the cost forecast as well, having to not worry about the different cloud provider and just having that all centralized through Databricks. And it also opens up the capabilities to be able to utilize ML and GenAI on the platform, so such as model serving endpoints and vector search. Centralized governance, so as I touched on throughout the slide, we really, as a platform, want to take that away from the users. Users shouldn't have to worry about that, but we still, as a platform, have mandatory set of controls that we need to implement to meet our regulatory requirements. So centralized governance using Unity Catalog, which provides a rich suite of capability for you to be able to do just that, to be able to control access to data and store your metadata, but also be able to control access to a lot of different other objects that Databricks manages. And as I just covered, AI Gateway as well, to really be able to, now that we're stepping into the GenAI space, to really be able to centralize that governance and security, make sure our minimum controls are met, but also be able to provide that experience within the bank. And then end user mindset, we can't forget about that. So while implementing all of our security and governance controls is obviously important, it's really just a part of it. You still need to be able to provide an end user, a friendly and easy to use end user experience. You need to have a platform that people can do all the things that they need to do, but also do things that they didn't need to do in order for them to be able to do their job, but not just do their job, in order for them to do their job more efficiently and effectively than what they have been doing, because that's how you get the buy-in. And so with that, I will pass it back to Tom. And so, I went through. And so thank you for your time. I really hope you got some value out of this session, and I will pass it to Tom.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
So folks, as we start to draw close to the session today, I just wanted to also bring us back to some other key takeaways that you could potentially pick up today and start to think about applying tomorrow in your organisation. You know, if you think about all the good things that Dan has spoken about today and all the compliance controls, it really is there to position National Australia Bank and other organisations to start to scale innovation with confidence. You know, embedding these controls early on can help users start to adopt and use the platform with a high level of degree of confidence and also aligning closely with the business. The next is, it's more than just about compliance. You know, it's more than just about looking at the different controls that you need to have established and making sure that they are set up for success. Yes, they're important, but the key thing is again, unlocking that trust around data and all the AI capabilities that you're building within your organisation. You know, at Databricks, our mission is to help organisations like National Australia Bank differentiate and also apply, I guess, democratisation across their data and AI capabilities. You know, it's proof today that Databricks can help organisations like National Australia Bank with being able to establish a data intelligence platform to help modernise their capabilities. So if you're looking to get started today, or you're looking to even baseline where you're at from a data, AI, and governance perspective, you know, we have some great guides for you to start to reference. Our first on the left-hand side of the screen is our comprehensive guide from a data, AI, governance strategy perspective. It takes a 360-degree view from a business perspective and also from a controls perspective to help, I guess, give you that pathway to helping you understand what are those capabilities that you should be thinking about. The next is our data and AI security framework. So this is a really practical guide to helping, again, baseline your AI security, but also give you the prescriptive controls, that things that you should be thinking about, not just from a Databricks perspective, but more broader from an organisational standpoint. I also wanted just to draw some attention to some up-and-coming sessions that are also being presented here at the summit that might be of interest to you. Later today, we have Joanna Gurry from the National Australia Bank talking about their journey around modernisation of their, their heritage data platforms and their migration to Databricks from Teradata. And then tomorrow, from a product perspective, we have our product teams talking more about some of the controls that Dan spoke about today around security egress controls, private link, and a bunch of other announcements that have been made over the last 24 hours that we're releasing and announcing today. If you're looking to continue the conversation, Dan and I are going to be hanging around here for a couple of minutes after the session today, but feel free to also reach out to us online. We'd be more than happy to connect with you by LinkedIn and continue the conversation there as well. And with that, I wanted to thank you for attending the session today, and a special thanks to Dan and the National Australia Bank team for coming and presenting their insights as well today. Thank you, Dan.